Good morning, everyone. This is Jason Dean from Film Fanatic, the Film Fanatic headquarters. It's about Saturday, or actually, sorry, it's Friday morning at 11:30. So, hope everyone's doing good. We've had some serious breaks in the weather here in the Mid-Coast Maine area with like a 20-degree difference in temperature from it being pretty hot the last few weeks. Or maybe even it feels like it's been a month or two of where it's been consecutively like in the high 80s. It's been in the 90s, even in 100. It was like 100 degrees at one point on 1 or 2 days. So it's been pretty hot, and but now it's cool. It's cooled off quite a bit. Hopefully, we'll get some more hot temperatures before the summertime is over. Um, so yeah, I figured I would talk about some happenings in the quantum camp first. There's been a few new things coming up for that band. We have a few new happenings, a few new gigs kind of coming up, and some new news. So this Sunday we'll be back. Quantum will be back at Lulu's in Rockland. We'll be back doing our monthly residency at Lulu's. We start at like 2 o'clock, 2 to 5 p.m. And that's been really fun this year. We've been doing it. We've been doing it every other month or every month or so, and it's been a blast. Like I've said before, we have, as a band, we have a long history with Fog that goes back. Probably the band itself has been together for six 6.5 years, close to 7 years, which is hard to believe. And I remember it was like a few years. I used to play in a band called the 220s, and we used to play a lot of gigs in the area. And we had this one gig in particular. It was it was in this totally weird location, but we played at the Key Bank in Rockland, which is like right on Main Street. And back during that time, Northern Kingdom Music, which is long gone unfortunately, was a really great. It was a local music shop where you could go and buy equipment, and it was a great place. And they closed maybe four years ago now, and it was a sad time. But anyway, they back then they were sponsoring having live music, so they were doing these. They had different locations in Rockland, and I think there was maybe a couple of things that they did in Rockport or Camden, but I think they were mostly in Rockland. And they used to do these things where they would like basically have a provide a space and a showcase, and you basically play on the street for tips. But it was a cool thing, and they got the approval to do a lot of these kind of concerts at Key Bank of all places, which is super strange. So the bands would typically set up right in front of Key Bank, and you would just play. You would set up your equipment and just play your gig. And so with the 220s, we did that. We had signed up to do one of the shows, and it was like, I think it was in July or something like that. And it was, quite a few years ago, probably like 7 years ago, maybe even 8 years ago now. It's crazy. But so we set up and we played a set, and it was pretty good. Like we just played for I think a couple hours, and there people walking around town. It was kind of like busking, where busking is like, if anybody doesn't know what busking is, it's like a musician will set up on a corner somewhere and put out put out like a tip jar or a tip hat or something, and people will be walking by and they'll throw money in there if they like it or whatever. They'll come by and say hello. Or so we basically did that, but with the full band, and we played full electric kind of set, and it was cool. It was mellow, but it was fun. And then at the end of the set, Ashley Seelig, who is the owner of Fog, came over, and it was the first time I met her. And she came over, and she really dug the band. She really, liked the band. And I think it was the summer. It was probably, yeah, I think it was the summer that Fog had just opened. So she came over, introduced herself. We talked to her and introduced ourselves to her. And she's like, "Yeah, I really dug you guys." She's like, "What do you guys charge to, for a band for gigs and those kinds of things?" She's like, "I really love what you guys are doing, and we'd love to, you know, have music at the Fog, and we'd love to maybe have you guys here." And she's like, "I want to buy you guys all drinks." She's like, "I want to buy everybody here a beer." So we're like, "Great." So we packed up all of our stuff. She was really cool and really nice, and so we packed up all of our gear, and then as a band, we all went to Fog, and Ashley bought us like a whole round of beers, and it was our first time. It was my first time being inside Fog, and it was great. It was super cool, and we chatted with her for a period of time, and like I said before, they had just opened, so they were looking to like have music, and they were really interested in having the band. They had never had music in there before, so we exchanged contact information, and then in the preceding weeks, we two of us in the band had reached out and tried to, you know, set up a gig, and for whatever reason, it kind of never happened, and we weren't able to really nail a date for various reasons. So, but I kept Ashley's information as a contact. So a whole like, I don't know, maybe 3 years go by, and I think I had stopped in there a couple of times in that period for dinner and drinks, and I always thought it was a cool place. And again, they just kind of opened, so it was cool. So we would go there every now and then, just go out, socially and stuff. And then about 3 years after that time, I had started Quantum. And originally, when I started Quantum, it was just myself. It was just me. I The whole story of it was pretty funny because I had never run sound before. I had never run my own sound system, or was never a frontman in any capacity before in a band. So I spent that time, 3 years after we had played there at the Key Bank. I spent that time. I bought my first PA system. Got used to trying to, I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out, how to set it up, and all those kinds of things. And it took a while. And also during that time, I started writing music on my own. I basically had a microKORG, which is the keyboard, and I had a Calculator Pro, which was also made by Korg. And at the time, I didn't realize that both of those interfaces were you could interconnect them. So I would basically spend hours upon hours just messing around, and I would connect both of these contraptions, and I would just improvise. And I started spending hours just doing that, and I would just have a set of headphones, or I'd do it through my PA, and I just work on stuff. And I started over a period of like a few months, I started actually kind of like writing a couple of songs, and then before I knew it, I had about maybe, you know, 2 or 3 songs, and it was like maybe the length of like 20 minutes or so. So I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, and so I kept chipping away at it. And I had a friend who worked at a radio station on WERU, and his show was like mostly centered on electronic music. Played a lot of house music, and they would occasionally have music, like live bands or live solo artists come on the show and perform. So I just had this idea. Why don't I, try doing like trying to like set myself a goal of maybe if I set up a show on, maybe we could set up like a show on the radio as Quantum, and I could be like, okay, this is my goal. Like I can, see like basically test run what this whole thing is and see if it could actually work. So I mentioned it to them, and I mentioned it to him, and he was totally into it. So I ended up like booking a gig on WRU, and it was like my first time ever doing like a solo show, and it was the first, I guess you can call it, like gig for Quantum. So he gave me like a 45-minute slot, and it was like a month or two out. So um, so like for the next month or so, and at that time I was like, I had left a couple of projects that I was in. I wasn't involved with a few bands, so I had a lot of free time. So I spent, you know, every day and night working on getting ready for my first gig for this radio show. So I worked, you know, hours and hours on building some new tracks and what have you. And I got a set together that was about 40 minutes of like original stuff. And I did a little bit of improvising, but it was mostly tried to I mostly tried to keep it on the, you know, the thing of where things were kind of rehearsed and together, because I figured that would help me because it was a new thing. So I ended up doing the show on WRU. I went, played, I set up my stuff, and I did like a 40-minute set of where I played the stuff I was working on. And it was cool. Like, it was, later it was posted online, the performance, and it was on Facebook and a couple other social media platforms. And, you know, quite a few people said like, oh, like this is really cool, and like they thought it was, you know, basically got some really good feedback. And I came away from this situation thinking, oh, okay, you know, maybe I can, maybe this could be a band. Maybe I can make this into something where I could like perform it out at like clubs or what have you. And my one of my best friends, Mike Whitehead, had listened to the show with his family, and he was one of the people that had said to me, you know, like I think there's something here like that's worth pursuing. Like you should really like kind of, you know, take this a little bit more serious, or like, you know, stick with it basically. Like there's something there. So I was like, yeah, I was really encouraged by the feedback I got, especially from Mike. And so I, you know, continued to work on the music, and then I thought, well, we'll see, you know, where could I play? Where could I find a place that would have this music? So I thought one of the first places I thought that maybe it could be a good fit was Fog. So I reached out to Ashley, you know, and this was after a few years had gone by since I met her, and I said, well, hey, I have this electronic project that I'm kind of starting. Would you, you know, what would you think if I came and did a set there, or like we booked a gig, or, you know, something like for a couple hours, you know, and just, you know, and we promote it and kind of treat it as a gig. And she was totally into it, but she said like I hadn't had any music actually recorded yet, so she said what you could do is come down. At that time they had an open mic, and she's like, you should come down to the open mic and play at it, and we'll like check out your stuff, and we'll see if it's good basically, and if we dig it, and if it's like kind of fits the room. And so I went down, and I remember telling Mike, my friend Mike Whitehead, I remember going, I told him about it, and I went down to the open mic, and he came out, and I basically set up my stuff at this open mic, and I did like a 20-minute set, and I played the stuff I more or less played on the radio. And it seemed like it went over pretty well, and like people were into it, and Ashley was like really into it, and Mike was into it, and people that were there were kind of digging it. And so after that point, she's like, okay, let's book some gigs, you know. And I was like, great, this would be awesome. So we ended up like a couple weeks later, we ended up booking a couple of gigs, and they were like, you know, quite a few months, like 3 or 4 months ahead, or 3 or 4 months, you know, down the road. So I had a lot of time to to kind of get ready to play like a 2 or 3 hour set. And during that time when I was getting that stuff situated, Mike had reached out to me about, hey, it could be a cool thing if we try, you know, an interesting kind of mix. Is like, well, maybe I could play bass, live bass, because he had just started playing bass, and Mike is primarily a jazz trumpet player. So he was like, "Yeah, maybe we can do that." And I was like, "Yeah, that might be interesting. Like have live bass and have like he was really into like effects, and he used like effects pedals and delays and kinds of things on and those kinds of things on his trumpet, but he wanted to use that on his bass." So I was like, "That could be a really cool, different idea, interesting idea." So we started. After that point, we started jamming, and I don't know, it was great. Like it seemed like it clicked, and we had been friends already for a long time by that point anyway, and we played in lots of projects, but it just clicked, and then we were like, okay, we're gonna do it. This is gonna be a band. So we ended up playing gigs at Fog, and ended up being pretty fun. We had some really good gigs, and then over the years we did that every summer. Like we'd play a few gigs there, and we kind of built it up and tried lots of different things, and then for whatever reason, a few years went by, or 1 or 2 years went by, and we didn't play there, and then fast forward to a few years ago, we ended up getting in touch with Ashley again, and then she like started giving us a lot of gigs, and the pay was better, and we started playing there like every month, and she gave us like a residency, and it was great. Like it was super fun. The band, I felt like the band, because of that situation, we were able to really develop the sound of the band and really, really, it pushed us to really work harder, and it pushed me a lot to work harder and to kind of cultivate a sound. And so we kept up that residency for about 3 years, and it was great. It was a really great learning experience. It was really fun and learned a lot. So, and then obviously the pandemic hit, and Fog unfortunately has been closed for a long time, 2.5 years already. So we obviously didn't do any gigs there for a long time, and so one of my goals like over time with Quantum, like we play a lot of other gigs, and we have experience playing different venues in the area, and we at one point we were going uh, on these little mini tours, and we'd play down in we'd play gigs in Maine or Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then we started playing a lot in New York City, and then at one point we were going on the road a little bit further, and we go to we play in Vermont, and then we play gigs in we started playing in Montreal, which was really amazing. That was an amazing time to play down there, or to play there. So we started playing a lot of different kinds of gigs, but then I kind of felt like it would be really cool if we had a place locally that we could do like a residency thing, and we could like build something, and maybe have something we could really develop as a band. So Fog ended up being that place, and it was just a really great thing, and it was good pay. And so because the pandemic had stopped, so we just started doing that again this year, and it's different because it's outside, and it's in we set up where Lulu's is, which is the ice cream gelato place that they own. So it's a little bit of a different setup. So we just kind of it's a little bit more low key and laid back, but it's basically kind of the same thing, and it's during the day, and it's outside, and it's on Sundays when we do it. But it's been great to be able to do that again in a different in a different capacity. But it's been a lot of fun. So we'll be there this Sunday, and then another friend who is a really fabulous musician in the area, AC Davis, a really tremendous bass player, all around incredible musician. He does these festival like kind of thing, festival shows, and usually like in September at the end of the summer or midsummer, and he'll have like 5 or 6 bands, and he'll have like a food truck, like a barbecue kind of thing, and they have like a big stage. And I've never been able to go out to it, but he just recently asked us to play with Quantum, so we're gonna play there at this at his place for this festival next month with a bunch of other bands. I think one of the bands that's playing is Drive By Todd, and which is kind of one of my favorite local bands. So that'll be really fun, and so we'll be doing that. And then we have some more Lulu's gigs coming up after that, and um, We're also going to be doing, which I'm really kind of excited about. I have a friend who is going to be doing. Two friends are going to be having a house party, so we're going to do like a kind of a house party gig, but it's going to be kind of outside. There's going to be, I think, like a ticketed kind of scenario where we'll have tickets to kind of, for people to come in and for admission, and it's going to be like outside on this big deck. And one of the cool things is my friend Halsey, or Eric Halsey, everybody calls him Halsey, who is like one of my favorite musicians in the area, just an amazing musician, incredible bass player, all around musician. He's also an electronic artist. And since I've known him for a few years now, he's always talked about all this music that he's been sitting on, but he's never like taken it out and performed it anywhere. So he's going to be, and it's really great. It's really great music. He's on Instagram and he posts like all these great videos of his music, and it's really great. It's all like really cool electronic based music, but it has a real like dance quality. It's got a very hip hop kind of vibe to it. It reminds me a lot of Thundercat, and great stuff. Great. So he's going to play also at this party, and it will be like his, you know, technically like his first gig or his first kind of venture into like performing the music out, and it's going to be like a one man show. So I'm super excited about that. And the other development is that we're working on my friend Ronnie, who actually played with us at the Quantum release party, who is just another incredible musician. He is an amazing guitar player, but he also does all this really wild and crazy electronic music. We we've had this idea of like finding a place or a venue that where we could do like a residency, maybe year round, where it would be like his band, Ronnie's like electronic group, and it would be a set by Quantum and also Halsey, and then I have another friend I wanted to bring into it also. Basically, the idea was to find a place where we could have this residency where it'd be like a monthly thing, maybe a couple times a month, but we could do it year round and kind of build and cultivate like a scene where there's, you know, a night or a day you could go and see all original electronic music. And all this stuff that the three of us do, I think it's cool too because it's all like under that label of electronic based music, but it's all really really different, and there's a lot of variety from each other. And so I think that's part of the allure of doing it. It could be really fun to do that. And we thought about, we do like each of us would do a set. If we found a place, we'd each do a set. We would kind of like change up who's going to play, the order, have the sets kind of bleed into one another, and basically create this experience that people could go, a place where people could go, maybe have have a drink or some food and be able to like check out electronic music, because there isn't a place like that. There never really has been. And we've talked about it too. A lot of the times the stuff that we do, we kind of do it by ourselves. Like Quantum, we used to do a lot of shows with different bands, but they were never like, kind of, they were never really electronic based kind of things. But we did that for a while. But for the most part, we do everything kind of alone, and it's been great and fine, and it's been pretty a real positive experience. But it's also has its pitfalls. It's also can be kind of tough when you're kind of doing everything yourself. And Ronnie's been doing the same thing, been in the same boat. So we had this scenario of like us kind of joining forces. So right now we're kicking around a bunch of different ideas and some places that could be on the radar to kind of host something like this, and it would ideally be a place that where we could do it year round. So we'll see what happens, and we'll definitely keep updates for give you updates as things go. And in regards to that house party show, once we get things more and more secured, it's going to be a public event, so there'll be lots of promotion for that, and also AC Davis's show. And so yeah, I'm kind of excited about some of these prospects. So this brings me to the whole point of this show, or the main point. This is this incredible movie I saw. it's kind of right now. I'd almost say it's just about it's it might be on my top 10 list. It's this Canadian movie called The Siege. It's from 1983, and it's just basically a Canadian exploitation movie. It came out in 1983, and the whole premise of the movie, I had never seen this before. I bought this on a whim this week, and I just love the packaging. It's total 80s. Like the music is just incredible, the whole thing. And it was the film was directed by Maura O'Connell and Paul Donovan. The music and the music score was written and performed by Peter Jermyn and Drew King. And again, I had never seen this film before, never even heard of it. Super obscure movie. I looked at the cover and I was like, this looks amazing. And it's got this other cover in the back, and the review of it on the cover is just like awesome too. It says it's a totally unique and truly disturbing film going experience, and I'm like, this is great. And then it's got this other. You take the slip cover off, and this just is super cool here. That's just like wicked cool. Fight crime, shoot back. I mean, just great. And the other thing too that's really interesting about this film, this film is like so incredibly low budget, and it came out in the '80s, but it was distributed by New Line Cinema, which is like a major company. And New Line Cinema actually is still around. New Line Cinema, one of the franchises that put New Line Cinema on the map. It might have been responsible for really putting New Line Cinema on the map as like a major player in in Hollywood films, particularly horror films, was the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The Wes Craven film, the iconic horror movie that it is, and then led to the whole franchise. But New Line Cinema was uh, the company that distributed it, and that became a phenomenon. So I was really surprised that like this super low budget uh, exploitation movie was on a major distribution or was involved with a major distribution company like that. So, and the basic premise of this film is super cool. I'm a big fan of like post-apocalyptic sci-fi kinds of things, and the whole premise of the story is that it takes place in Canada, and basically the entire police force in the country go on strike, and it's all over uh, payment issues. So the entire police force goes on strike for about 45 days. So so basically all of these gangs come uh, kind of move onto take over the city, and they try to just wreak chaos and take advantage of the situation. And there's this one group in particular that's called the New Order, and basically they're this like really violent group of fascists, and they just cause chaos and kill lots of people and just like just terrorize people. And there's a situation where they have this whole group of people where they hold captive, and they end up killing a lot of these people. Well, one of the guys who is a captive ends up escaping, and the whole premise of the movie is them basically trying to find this guy. And when this guy gets free and is able to break away from this gang of thugs, the New Order, he finds refuge with this family in this house or this apartment, and they basically barricade themselves, and they take him in and decide to protect him. And so the whole premise of the movie is these guys trying to get this guy, and what that entails. And it's such an awesome movie. It's super suspenseful. It's really dark. It's super violent. It is shocking. The first half hour of the film, in particular, where you get introduced to the New Order, is pretty shocking, and it's pretty intense. But it's super gritty. The music is just incredible. All this great '80s like synth stuff that like really reminds me of like kind of almost like dark wave music, like the whole, even though it's not like a science fiction movie, it has like the music almost has like a cyberpunk kind of vibe to it, like that very dark wave, the dark wave sound that kind of came out of the '80s. It's just amazing music. But the amount of suspense and tension in this film is really good. Like I was pretty amazed like how high it was, and it's like a gripping, it's a like really gripping film, and it grabs your attention right in the beginning and keeps it doesn't let go right to the bitter end. And the ending is great. It's a really great film. And I again, it was something I had never seen before. And like I said, I've been trying to take chances with seeing films because I've been really digging I've been really diving deep into the whole world of exploitation. So I've been taking chances and seeing a lot of things that I've never seen before. And this is one of them. Fabulous movie, The Siege. And the Blu ray transfer is amazing. The only thing that's disappointing is there isn't any special features on it. There is a commentary track with the director and the producer, and I will probably check it out because I love this movie so much. But that's the only thing is it doesn't really have that aspect to it. But the transfer, the sound, and everything is just like oh, it's just so great. So I highly recommend this. This is called The Siege again from 1982. It's a Canadian movie. Highly, highly recommend it. So thanks again. This is Jason Dean from Film Fanatic, and we will see you next time. Peace.